Hi everyone, welcome here again. When we were organizing this conference, I had a big dream to have here on stage a real data journalist. I do love data communication, I love data visualization, and I even had a small data journalist blog when I was studying statistics. So you can guess that it's really a pleasure for me and an honor to introduce on stage Sharon Machlis. Sharon Macklis is a long-term data technology journalist. She is currently director of editorial data and analytics and EDG communication, and is the author of Practical R for Mass Communication and Journalism. So she'll be sharing some art tips and ideas she's learned as a tech journalist. I'm so eager to listen to. So welcome, Sharon. Welcome here.
Thank you so much, Mariachiara. And to all the conference organizers, I'm so sorry we can't all be together in beautiful Milano. Now even more sorry.
Yeah, okay. Okay, please go.
Okay, so sorry we can't all be together, but my goal today is for you to come away with at least one useful tip or idea you can use in your own work while you're watching from the comfort of your own home. So I'm a journalist who uses R and writes about R. Things I've learned and I'd like to share come from three main areas. General storytelling advice as a writer, storytelling with R when using R for data journalism projects, and things I've learned about the language from writing about R. I began my career at a local newspaper back in the print newspaper days. Some of you younger folks may not remember that. But it was great training for telling stories. You had to convince an editor that your story idea was worth publishing and putting in a good place in the newspaper, not somewhere back on page 32. And if you had a big story, one for the front page, you had to convince an editor to put it someplace with a good headline, where it really would have an impact. And usually you didn't have space for too many words on page one. You had to make people want to turn the page and read the rest of the story. Today, a lot of us have unlimited space online, but our readers' attention span is not unlimited. You still need to capture people's attention quickly because there is always something else out there competing for their attention, especially if they're online. So there are two important questions I tell writers they need to answer when they are working on stories. So what? Who cares? Those are always good questions to think about when you're telling any story, with data or without. If you can't answer these questions, it's going to be hard for you to keep any readers engaged. This New York Times graph answers those questions. It makes me want to look and find out more. So this shows number of weekly deaths in New York City since 2017 compared to the expected weekly average. So why is this visualization so effective? It uses a bright, strong color for us to pay attention to the data that's important. If these bars were all dark blue, I'd still notice that the last few bars are very tall, but the graph wouldn't have the same impact. Also, notice the colors in the graph headline. Above is in red, below is in gray. So you don't have to look at a separate legend to see what the colors mean. And there's a little text to help you understand the most important point: more than 20,000 unexpected deaths. That was a lot higher than the official COVID-19 death total at the time. If you were in New York City, you probably cared. Ggplot 2 lets us create a graph something like this, but we need to spend a little time changing some defaults and maybe use a few extra packages. For instance, the GG text package offers some text formatting for titles and axes. The package website has a lot of information and examples. Now, I don't have the data for unexpected weekly deaths in New York, so instead let me create some simple dummy data for my own graph. In this code, I create a data frame with some values showing a similar trend. This is the default Ggplot column chart without changing anything. It's easy to see the last few bars are much higher than the others, but it's just not as striking as the New York Times version. But with a few more lines of code, we can get closer to the Times version. I've colored by positive and negative numbers, dark red for positive, gray for negative, and changed to Theme Classic to remove the gray background and grid lines. I also removed the graph legend. For a headline a little like the Times version, I used ggtext. The labs function toward the bottom uses some HTML to make above red and below dark gray. I also needed to add element markdown to the plot title theme. With these few changes, look at the difference. Before, after. It's definitely worth the time to change some defaults. If you're not a regular Ggplot user, you might have a couple of thoughts about this. One, maybe you find it hard to come up with your own improvements to the defaults. Or two, if you finally figure out the code for a graph you like, you'll never remember how to do it again. There are answers to both issues. If you don't think you have skills to design your own improvements, well, neither do I. But the good news is, other professional data journalists have done it for us, and they've shared their work. The BBC even wrote a package, Ggplot, to make it easier for the rest of us to create BBC-style charts. It has two functions, BBC Style to add their theme to a plot, and Finalize Plot to help us save our graphs. But in addition to that, they wrote and published a free online graphics cookbook. It explains how to use regular Ggplot functions to make graphs like theirs. And they posted it free online. That was an incredibly generous thing to do. If you use Ggplot, that cookbook is definitely worth a read. And it's very well documented, like you'd expect from something written by journalists. So here's one example of using the BBC style and advice from their cookbook to add some text to a graph. This is the code. That line highlighted in yellow is needed on Windows systems so Ggplot finds the right font for the theme. And instead of a theme function like I used before, here I use the BBC style function to get the BBC look. The first code group is my regular Ggplot code. The part starting with geom label uses code suggested in the BBC cookbook. The geom curve adds a curved arrow to the text on the graph, also from BBC. And here's the result. Now, a professional designer would do more to improve this. But as it is, I think it's a compelling way to tell this story. It leads viewers to what's important without a lot of extra distractions. But I'll admit, it took a lot of code to create this graph, even without the text label. And if you don't use Ggplot all the time, it may be hard to remember all of this. My advice, use Rstudio code snippets. Snippets are a way to store code chunks that you want to reuse. As you're typing in the Rstudio source panel, you get a drop-down list of available snippets along with functions and variables, like this screenshot of JJ Allaire's Rstudio blog post shows. Some snippets come built into Rstudio, but you can also create your own. The Use This Package's Edit Rstudio Snippets function opens your Rstudio snippet file. This is what the top of mine looks like. The first snippet is for my bar graph showing positive values in red and negative values in gray. The second snippet is a template for a basic bar chart with blue bars that I use a lot. A snippet starts with the reserved word snippet and a space and then the name of the snippet. Then every line of code in the snippet needs to start with a tab to indent. Do you see in the third line of code some things that start with a $sign and an open bracket? Those are snippet variables. Once you invoke a snippet with a tab completion, you can then use the tab key to jump from variable to variable and fill in the values you want in there. So let me show you what it looks like to use a snippet. I did a quick screen share recording to make sure that it all worked. So I start typing to get the drop-down list with possible choices. When I pick the one I want, it adds all the code from the snippet. Then I can jump to my variables with the tab key and fill in the names I want. I did an InfoWorld article and Do More with R YouTube video on code snippets, if you'd like to learn more about them. I find them especially useful for graphics because it can take a while to fiddle with visualization code until I get something I like. And I want to be able to reuse my code. Now for some other tips I've learned while using and writing about R. Document your code. That's a big one. Whenever I think, oh, I'll remember what this does, chances are 6 months later, I won't. If you're creating an R package, there's a formal structure and system for documenting each function to generate a help file. And writing packages even just for yourself is actually a great way to be disciplined about documenting your code and finding things later. But I know that in the real world, a lot of us don't do that. But we can still use a package tool for documentation even when we're not writing a package. Rstudio creates a scaffold for you to describe a function, each function argument, and what the function returns. Rstudio makes it easy. Let me play this short screen capture to demo. So I go to Insert Rstudio Skeleton, and then I have a structure for documenting the function, even if it won't knit to create a package. Now at least I know what it does, what the argument is supposed to be, and what the function returns. And speaking about functions, Rstudio has a nice shortcut for turning regular code into a function. You define your code, then go to Code, Extract Function, and give it a name. Rstudio then creates the function, guessing the arguments. A lot of times I change an argument name so it makes more sense when I reuse it, so it's a little more generic. So instead of week, here I'm using date call. Next, one of my favorite things about R Markdown. It's great for storytelling. It's also great when I want to document to myself steps I'm taking in a project. A lot of you probably already use it, but if you don't, I highly recommend checking it out. It lets you easily mix text, R code, and graphics, and you can generate files in HTML, PDF, Word, and other formats. I even did these slides in R Markdown. I've got links to a couple of resources from Rstudio on this slide if you'd like to learn more. And if you haven't investigated using R Markdown with parameters, so you have one template that can use multiple variables or data sets, that's something else worth checking out. It can be a big productivity enhancer. Another productivity boost is remembering what you've already learned, not as easy as it may sound. When I teach beginner workshops, people often ask how I keep track of all the packages and functions I use. That can be hard even for long-time R users. Code snippets that I talked about before are one way. But I also keep spreadsheets of some of my favorite functions and packages, and then turn them into searchable tables. Let me try to show you one example. There are almost 200 tasks with code here. Yes, it took some time to put together, but now it's a lot faster than looking things up on Stack Overflow or Google. That's how I turn numbers with commas that are strings into R number objects. There are at least two very nice packages for turning data frames into searchable HTML tables, DT and React Table. The example on this slide is from the React Table package site. It takes just one line of code to turn a data frame into a searchable, sortable table. This is my dummy data from before. I can see all the ones that are below 0. I can sort by value. I can search and do a lot more. This is also a great way to share data with other people who might not use R. Create a table in an R Markdown document and generate an HTML file. To finish, I'd like to share a few more of my favorite R resources. From DataViz has a lot of ideas for graph types if you're tired of the same bar charts and line charts. You pick the type of data you have. Here I chose numeric and categoric, and you get a lot of choices. When you pick one, it tells you about the visualization type and how to avoid common mistakes, such as here with lollipop charts. You can then click through to the R graph gallery to see a few options for that kind of visualization. So here are some choices for lollipop charts, and then you can select one of those to get the code. If you already know what kind of graph you want and just need code, you can start at the R graphs gallery at the URL here. For general advice about good visualization, there was an excellent talk at Rstudio conference in January by professional designer Will Chase, The Glamour of Graphics. Chase said he was invited to speak at the conference after creating this fun fake magazine cover and posting it on social media. A lot of our users got a laugh out of this one. I just came across this blog post a couple of weeks ago with some interesting ideas on customizing Ggplot defaults. I'll be posting the link to my slide presentation again at the end of my talk, so you don't need to copy this blog post's long URL. You can just find them again on my slides. When people ask me how I keep up with all the things going on in R, I use a lot of sources: blogs, GitHub, CRAN, newsletters. But these days, one of my favorite sources is Twitter and the rstats hashtag. Even if you're on Twitter a lot, and I definitely am, it's easy to miss things. But thanks for the R-Tweet R package by Michael Kearney, it's also easy to catch up with what I might have missed. I used that package to make an app for myself. It still has a little trouble storing historical tweets, but it works fine for recent tweets. So let me try to show you that. So if I want to check if there's anything new or interesting about, say, the data.table package, I can put in the rdata_table hashtag, searching for that in the tweets, see if there's anything there. Oops, sorry. Or I can sort the table to look at most liked rstats tweets in the last couple of weeks. I sometimes don't want to see tweets with a whole load of hashtags, so I added a filter that lets me say I just want, let's say, 5 hashtags. I can even look for e-Rum tweets. Now, one thing I like to do when following conference hashtags is to look for tweets that contain a URL. It's a great way to find resources like slides or GitHub code people are sharing. So here I added that. I'd say I would like to just look at tweets with URLs. And now I can see all the tweets from the conference with the conference hashtag sorted by most liked with URLs. Now here is how easy it is to pull e-Rum2020 tweets into an R data frame. Load the package. You can authenticate it with your Twitter account in a browser when you do, if you're using it for the first time, and run this single line of code. I screened out retweets here, but you don't have to. You'll get back a data frame with around 80 columns. Now this creates a new data frame from that existing data frame with just the tweets that have a URL. I'm filtering for anything where the URL column isn't empty. Then I selected and renamed a few columns since I didn't want all 80 of them, sorted it, and I get a data frame that looks like something like this in a table. I made a do more with our video on how to use the rtweet package to search for conference or other hashtags if you want to find out more. And a little extra bonus that's not in my slide presentation, but I actually made an app just for the conference tweets, which you can see the URL up there, apps.maclis.com/shiny/e-Rum2020, all lowercase. And then you can search for other things here, like maybe bicycle, for the bicycle talk, or all the shiny tweets, and so on. And that's it. I know it's really late and it's kind of hard to be sitting for so long at home instead of at the conference walking around. But here are some links to find out more. My Twitter handle, Sharon000. My Do More With Our video series, it's the link there. And a link to some information about my book. Also, as I promised, a link to these slides, which should already be active now. Really, thanks everyone for your attention. I know it's so hard to sit in front of a screen for so many hours at home, and I appreciate your time. Again, a big thanks to the conference organizers who are doing so much work. They did so much work beforehand. They're having such long days working hard now. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. You can switch on your video again.
Yep.
Okay, so we are both here. Okay.
Love that.
It's so great. This is our stage director, Andrea Guzzo, so I have the occasion to thank him. That is like doing all these sounds. It's so great. Okay, we have some time for the questions. So we had several questions coming from the instrument that we are using. It's called this. If you can remove the screen, then we have more space. Okay, and I will share mine. Okay. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so this was the most voted question for you. So I will read it. How have you become a data journalist?
Well, it's a long journey. and you know, not to date myself, but I got into journalism before there was such a thing as data journalism, because it was, I hate to say this, before the World Wide Web, before personal computers. But I did study both communications and statistics in university. I would do it obviously a lot differently now. I started doing regular local journalism. It's just great training to learn how to learn things. Then I started with doing technology journalism. I kind of moved into that because the area that I was doing local journalism is a very high-tech area. And it went on from there. Then I started working with colleagues who had interesting projects and needed help. And so I started helping them in addition to doing my own work. And it just kind of went from there. But again, this was before there was such a thing as a career as a data journalist. Now I would say studying that is a good idea, you know, studying data journalism specifically. But don't leave out regular journalism. There was a great interview with a top data journalist at the New York, I think the New York Times, Ben Castleman, who said, you know, one of his important tools is the telephone. You still need to talk to people. You can't just look at a data set and write a great story about it. You need domain expertise. So if you don't have it, you need to talk to the person on your staff who knows about it. And you need people. You need to talk to people. You need to talk to the people who created the data set, but you also need to talk to people who are affected by whatever you're writing about, because that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, like how to translate also some data analysis into a story. So something that you can tell, and maybe something that you can learn doing also regular journalism. Okay, thank you for your answer. We can move to the next question. Here it is. Data journalism without data literacy is not as effective as it could. Which are the highest barriers to increase data literacy? Does R have a role in that?
Yes, and there are some journalists who are fabulous journalists who are not that great with data. There are some people who are really fabulous at data, but are not that great at the journalism part. And then, so you really want the intersection of the two. But if you don't have that, then what you want is a team or one or more people on a journalism staff who are data literate, who can work with your subject matter expertise. I mean, that's one of the things I loved doing the most when I was working at Computer World, specifically as opposed to IDG, which is the parent company. I worked with our government reporter who was just so good at knowing his beat and finding interesting ideas, interesting angles, interesting data. And then we would work together. I mean, he knows how to use Excel, but to take it to the next level when you have 150,000 rows and you need to do a lot of data cleaning, I don't want to crap on Excel. It's a good tool for what it does, but for certain things, it's not the best tool. And that's where R comes in. I would love it if every journalist would know R, but that's never going to happen. I mean, I would be happy if every journalist knew how to use Excel well, and then they knew when they reached the limits of Excel when to ask for help. That's really what you want on a large journalism team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's something like which is common in several fields, like when data come into account. Okay, so we have solved this. This one. Beyond DataViz, do you use R for documenting your work or making reports too?
Oh yes, I do. In fact, I started using R for an investigative journalism project, and I don't know about you all, but when I was first learning, like if I didn't use it all the time, like the next week I would forget what I learned the week before. So to start to keep my skills sharp between data journalism projects, because we didn't do that much data journalism at Computer World, I started using it on our website analytics. And I started and I'm like, oh, that's a fun way to do our markdown. I started sending reports around in our markdown, showing all these graphs with like, oh, here's the traffic, here's the top stories. And people loved it. And I started doing more and more of that. And that's how I ended up in a role that's part journalist and actually part data analyst. I do a lot of reporting now using R markdown, using Shiny. It's really well received internally.
Okay, cool. Okay, then is coding common in your domain? How many colleagues of yours share such skills?
Yeah, it's sort of an unfair question, because I work for IDG, which is the parent company of InfoWorld, a site for developers, Computer World, PC World, Mac World. So a lot of my colleagues do know how to code. If the question is in general newspaper newsrooms, and I would say less so.
Okay. Cool. Great. Can I transfer? Okay, I will allow it. The custom-made code snippet from Rstudio in one computer to another computer, or this is very specific?
Yes, what I do is because the code snippets file is just a text file in a specific format. So what I do is I have a GitHub repository where I sync that file to GitHub, so that when I'm at another computer, I can just download it, the whole file. So, and I can keep it synced up. If I add a snippet at work, I can sync it up. If I add a snippet at home, I can sync it up. So yeah, and that's a really good idea. I'm glad you asked that.
Okay, cool. Great. Then we are covering several questions. Wow, you have received a lot. Have you ever published a visualization without any post-processing or redesign with D3.js or similar?
Yeah, I mean, I personally have, in a news story, and not like a big project, but yeah, I mean, we don't have a huge design staff, so I basically don't bother them unless it's a big feature story, and I don't do D3.js. I'm glad other people do, but I don't.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so and then what's your favorite way to convince people to stop drawing graph in Excel? My personal answer is that they are ugly, but I don't know what you think.
Some people still do, and if it works for them, then it's hard to
Yeah,
say. But
okay.
the best way to do it, I mean, besides showing how much nicer they look in R, obviously, is
Yeah.
oh, look how much easy it's. I still think it's easier to rerun the same visualization with new data in R than it is in Excel. This will save you time. Is the best thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's true. And then, okay, let's, forgot. Oh, sorry. I didn't want, but I canceled the question. So we have to jump that. Do you know of some old school journalists teaming up with data fine people instead of learning on their own?
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are in newspaper newsrooms, but I personally don't.
Okay. And then last one is this. How much code is needed to make a good modern data journalist? So
That depends if you want to do data journalism on your regular beat or whether you want to be a full-time data journalist. I mean, if you want to do good data journalism in your own beat, honestly, Excel much of the time will let you do great stories. If you want to be a great a full-time data journalist, I think you need to know something like R or Python well, and it probably helps to have some familiarity with SQL databases too.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. I think we have again. Oh, it's cool to see like this question jumping. I hope this one was the one that I accidentally deleted. So, what's your favorite Ggplot 2 theme and color palette?
The theme is theme minimal, the one that gets rid of all the distractions. I do believe that getting rid of background distractions helps readers focus on what's important. I don't actually have a favorite color palette. I need one. I've been looking I've been looking
Next
around
time.
a lot, and I haven't found one that I love yet. But
Like the
I'm open
Sharon palette. You can
I'm
build
open to
it.
suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if we still have time. I have to ask to the direction, or shall we go? Because since we have this slight movement in the schedule, I don't know if the yoga session is still scheduled at 5:30, or we have moved this and then we can cover the last questions. So we can go ahead with another question, and then when I figure out, then we will see. Okay, so this one is covered, and then this one. Do you know of some old school journalists teaming up with data fine people instead? Oh no, this one was covered. Sorry. This one was covered too. So this one. How much consideration do you give to color vision deficiencies in your visualizations?
Not as much as I should. It's a really good question.
Yeah.
A lot of the visualizations start off internally, and I know the people who are consuming them, and they don't have those issues. But there are colorblind friendly color palettes that I need to be looking at more. I know there are. I don't have them off the top of my head, but if you look around, there are collections of our color palettes, some of which are friendly for those with those issues.
Yeah. I see that the next question it's not a question, it's just a live experiment where the top e-Rum2020 twitters and say here are the results, but I guess I cannot just click on it. I can copy, but then I'm just sharing this tab. So I'm sorry we won't see it, but later everyone can see it. And the last question, then we have the yoga session. So you are, if you want to join, that's great. How to handle the never-ending changes that C-level manager ask on your reporting and DataViz? Yeah.
That is a fabulous question. Some of it is R. So, it's actually not that hard to make changes. And that's one of the great things about using R instead of Excel, where changes are more often. I do try to train people I do try to talk with people before to say, instead of them asking me like, I want these 5 data points, I try to push back and say, what questions are you trying to answer? So I can anticipate what they might ask that they didn't think to ask for. And, depending on how high level the person is, either you say, well, this is as much as I can do, or sure, I'll get right on that.
Yeah. Okay, I can try to show this tweet that they have linked since we have finished the question, and then it's time for the yoga session.
Yoga.
So I will, yeah.
I'm ready for that.
You're ready? Are you going to join? Okay, so this one. Okay, so Mirko Signorelli says, I just made a live experiment during Sharon talk. Mirko is the lead of our promo team. So here are the top 10 e-Rum2020 tweeters. So we have Bruce, after e-Rum2020 conf, we have Bruce Joe Bob B, Fede Bioinfo, Freeze. Oh my God, I cannot pronounce all of these names. So I'm sorry, but you, Sharon, are between them.
I made the top 10. Excellent. Okay.
Cool. Great. Okay, so I think we have done. Thank you very much for being here. I really enjoyed your talk and all the tips. And so, and I'm really so happy to have a data journalist at this conference. Believe me, it's really great for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you again for all the hard
work. So you had 2 applause.
Wow.
That's the best. Okay, so thank you very much, and hope we can meet in person sometimes in Milano.
That's my plan someday. Thanks, and thank you everyone for your attention. And again, thanks to the conference organizers. You guys have done an amazing job.
Thank you. Okay, I just say to all our watchers that we can see you tomorrow for the 3rd day of the conference. And third and the last day of the conference, then we will have the workshop day on Saturday. So hope to see you again. Thanks for being with us for so long, and see you tomorrow. Bye.